This all because her mother's parents were killed, and she was sent here as a baby to her aunt, who had the hotel down here by the railroad tracks.
Okay.
So she might know something more than, but that's where her mother grew up.
Okay.
And of course they used to tease her mother about living in the hotels. And Jimmy Mann used to walk her home from school, and they became her husband, and then Carolyn is the product of that. And sometimes I will do or contribute, I don't do anything, I contribute to the programs for the children at the library in her mother's name, because she was the most wonderful mother. And she had 3 of her own plus 1, and that one was me.
Oh,
I come up there and visit Carolyn, and she taught me to play baseball. She taught me to ride a bike. She was very patient. She never told my parents. She was a wonderful woman.
oh, that's so sweet.
And if she ever fussed at you, she'd really fuss at you, and then she'd just, because she could hope, and she'd say, "But I love you." That was her last
That's like my mom.
"But I love you."
That's too funny.
Okay, and then the other one is Joel, which is her husband. Now, he also knows people who I think are older than he is in Collierville that are native. Joel really, probably, he came later.
Okay.
First time I saw him, he was in knee pants. I wouldn't mention that. But that's how old he was when he got to Collierville. And his father, my father, were law partners.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I think I remember you telling me that when I called you that day.
no telling what I and not all I tell you is worth remembering.
Yes, ma'am.
You better get an edit going on that. Okay, so that's
There we go.
the lineup. Here's the telephone number of Carol.
Oh,
Now,
that's nice. Yeah.
Joel's brother-in-law, I saw the obituary for this morning. So, give him a little while.
Okay.
Oh, because they'll be involved with Jane.
Okay.
Okay. Do you
I'll
keep
keep
at
that
the
in mind.
phone number?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, that's my brain.
And
So, I guess we can start off by you just telling us a little bit just about
basic
yourself.
information, yeah.
I'd just like to know, like,
Just-
about your childhood, growing up, like during the war, like your connection with your father.
I don't remember anything during the war. What I have, the earliest memories are like photographs. You're not processing things, you just see something.
Right.
And you're trying to understand the world in visual, but you can't process that, you just look at it. And so, anyway, this is probably after the war. Now, I didn't know what war was.
Okay.
That was just a word, And the only reason I began to have some awareness, my parents came here. My mother was very much into horses, and she was in her young days a nationally known, recognized equestrian of show horses and things.
Oh, okay.
And she married my father. That was the end of the show horses. So she was into hunters and jumpers and one thing another, and eventually bred racehorses.
Okay.
And we were down here in the strip from about the library towards the front. It went all the way back over to Front Road, most all of our time, but eventually some of it was sold for the gravel pit back
that's
there
a
on the
big piece
back.
of land, yeah.
Well, it wasn't then. Land was, people had bigger places.
Yeah.
They raised things. This was more of a farming community. And my father told me that, for instance, Jimmy Humphreys, who really lived out around Cordova and all, that his father was quite the guru that the farming community looked to.
Okay.
And he was the mover and he got them to start growing flowers. And Humphreys flowers, like you pick in the field, not grain, they were shipped all over from Memphis. And that's where the Cordova farmers made their money when, I don't know what happened crop-wise, or, the shifting of commodities and stuff. But here, I remember more of cotton, because cotton was planted by Gail Wilson and other people. When my parents came here, they decided they were going to my father was raised on a farm. They'd been in the family since before the Civil War in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, I think they had more of a genteel idea of farming. But you could get help back there until the war came, and apparently they took the young men, it didn't matter. And so anyway, it was harder to find people to work. But they, my grandmother gave them some cows, and they got all of the stuff together. And they went into sorghum. And I don't think they did well at it. After a couple of tries, they just decided it was going to be sort of a genteel farm. You had a huge vegetable thing. We had a couple of cows for milk,
Right.
pasteurized their own milk, because diphtheria was what you got from milk. And my father's aunt, a very bright woman, the year she had her third child, all three of them died. And so people were very much into that. My grandfather was a doctor, and he got Vanderbilt Medical School accredited. But that's not Collierville's.
It's okay. We'll take any of it. Yeah.
Because because I was doing research on your father's side of the family, and in your family, like ancestry tree, there's a lot of famous people in
That goes back. The Polk side of it was my grandmother's, and they were married. One of her grandmothers was married to a Jones, who was, Robin Jones was the son of Cadwallader Jones.
Yes.
And she, my grandmother on my father's side, had a genealogy of all these people, descended. And then her father was married 3 times. The first one, there was one daughter, and then mother died. The second one with no children, mother died. And then the third one was my grandmother's mother, and she died in childbirth. And after 5, and the grieved father went down to Honduras or whatever and sent her money, and she had to decide how to spend the money and how to get it all, done. She bought a carriage. She could get to town.
That's funny.
Anyway, that's a whole other trip. Collierville. This was the Buffalo Trail.
Okay.
Poplar Pike.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by Buffalo Trail?
Well, buffaloes, animals are going to follow a path.
Right.
I mean, that's even how they migrate. They're following paths and things. And this was the stagecoach path, became the stagecoach path. It goes out to LaGrange, etc.
Okay.
And so that's where Poplar Pike is laid on top of.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And if you go out towards Moscow and LaGrange, if you take a turn to the south, it's down.
Right.
There's a great view out there, But nobody realizes because we go zoom, 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 zoom. Anyway, I don't know who the first people in Collierville were. Miss Denali used to drive the school bus, and he had a dairy.
Who?
Miss Denali.
Nally?
That's
Okay.
what we called him, Miss Denali. And John Porter would pick us up in the morning and take us to school up here. And
What school?
Collierville.
Y'all went to Collierville?
Was it where the...
Yeah, I used to
Collierville was right
roller
there?
skate in it on the weekends.
go.
The terrazzo floors make great skate. We would just break into it and go. And if anybody saw us, they'd say, "Get out of here," and that would be the end of it. Just children playing. You know, that's what children do.
That's funny.
So, anyway, yeah, I went up there until I was there in the 4th grade. And then I went in town to school, I and my sisters, into East High School, which had just opened up and supposed to be a very good school. And then from there, with my great grades of the bottom, they went to Hutchinson, and I graduated.
Okay.
And Jane Porter graduated from East High, I think, but Joel was here the whole 12 years.
Yeah, my grandfather graduated from East.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So, very familiar with that, yeah.
So, anyway, the cotton wagons would come up down Poplar Pike,
Okay.
and there was always a trail of cotton along the road because it was picked cotton.
Right.
It was going up here to the gin. The gin was over here across the railroad tracks, across from the old hotel,
Okay.
which later I think burned, and I don't know what's there now. I have no idea. I
Did
think
it
they're
burn?
thinking about putting another hotel there or something. I think I read.
really?
I don't know.
Do you know when it burned?
Hmm?
Do you know when it burned? Okay, because I knew there was
I
a
don't
fire of 1944 that had really done. I remember it
I
did some
thought
damage.
that would have to. It seems to me if I saw that, it would have been after 1944.
Okay, no, I was just
But
wondering.
I
yeah.
don't know too much on that. I just know that Becky Mann was raised at the hotel
Okay.
and by her aunt.
Okay.
And I assume I'm talking about the same hotel, but maybe maybe it burned and then they built that hotel.
Okay.
I have no idea on that.
Okay.
Ask Carolyn.
I will. We'll call her.
But I remember that after the war they didn't put much money into small towns because the veterans were coming. What I live in now, it was actually built for the returned veterans from World War II, but that's in town.
Okay. Where do you currently live? Do you still live in Collierville today?
No, I live in town.
Oh, okay.
I went where the boys were. There wasn't anything out here much. But they've turned out some very successful people. Morton here is my age. Joel Porter.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Like,
I do mind you asking because I'm going to give you a lesson in human beings,
yes, ma'am.
which you did not ask for. I think if you get to a majority, age is asked to discriminate. Too old or too young, how many children you have, too few, too many, how much money do you make, all of that is to put you in categories.
Right.
And I think that that is a bad thing often, mentalities and greeting and knowing people.
Right.
And when first thing you do, you start doing that, what difference, at a certain age, it makes no difference. Live like you're going to live forever. And you look like you may make it to Methuselah. But it's according to what you do. I mean, a lot of people that are my contemporaries don't do what I do. I don't have any ailments. I don't have anything like that. They have all kinds of things going on.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. It matters if you are the 2nd grade and you're supposed to be put in with 5th grade. Maybe you'd learn more, I don't know. But, you know, you've got to do some according to the progress and capabilities.
So do you happen to remember like any like propaganda from the war, like any pictures that you thought were really cool?
I don't know if I knew what cool was. A picture was a picture of what it was.
Right.
I don't know, but I know somewhere over the years, I've seen Uncle Sam,
Mm.
you know, I think he was looking for people to join the war or something, but that's reflective history where I saw it someplace else I don't even know.
Right.
Do you remember if they were supportive of the war? Did people of Collierville
I had no idea. I didn't have a brain.
Yeah. I didn't know if one of your family, anybody in your family had still said anything.
I don't know. I was too young to understand anything. And I just, you know, growing up, you have pictures of horses in the barn and well, ponds and things like that.
So do you feel that your family did a good job, you know, like kind of hiding the war from you, or like, or do you just think it was?
No, they didn't hide anything. I wish they had. They could have done a lot better. No, it just was the sense that I wasn't in that era, really.
Right.
You see, I was coming beyond
Right.
that
Okay.
era. It's when my mind began to
Fully processed.
I remember my mother saying, we were in the paddock in front of the barn, and I don't know what I was doing. I was just out there. And I heard Elsie ask Mommy a question. I don't know what the question was. And my mother said something about when your father went, the war was over, that the Germans had quit fighting when he came.
That's funny.
And you know, your fathers, you think are really big people. A lot of white boys. And they do. And that, I mean, I never quite figured that out. But I remember my mother sort of laughing when she said it. But I couldn't tell exactly which, because I didn't know what war was. You know.
That is too funny.
But it was so big the war shut down. But he said that they learned, he apparently was guarding prisoners somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know nothing about it really, other than the fact that they learned that the war was over because the prisoners had a radio and they told them. But, no, I don't remember that. But, you know, I remember coming up here, and my mother, during the war, she was a woman that liked to get to town. And she went to tractor driving school. And she assumed that she could drive any vehicle they could put together. And it turned out that we rented a car in Ireland one summer, and that we had a place there, a house in Ireland. And anyway, she couldn't put it in reverse. Well, hell of it, she couldn't find it. And so we would ride into town, and this is what I know, and then to get out, all the children would get out and push the car back so she could get enough room to go forward until the weekend was over and she could go back and ask somebody,
That is so
how do
funny.
I put this car in reverse?
Yeah. Tractor driver. I love it. That's awesome.
So, anyway, she didn't say that anymore. What else have you
So
got?
I have a question, because as I did some research on your father and your family, I found that like you have a lot of people in your family who decided to take a leadership position, and whether there was like a civil war going on, people like James Polk, you have different generals that.
Okay, well, let me explain to you about the Polks.
Okay.
They came over from Mecklenburg County, and they came to what was the vicinity of Nashville. And there were 4 brothers. Now, James K. Polk had no children, and he was a brother, one of the brothers that we were descended from. But that's not a straight descendancy.
Okay.
We were from another Polk.
Okay.
And then one of the brothers, Lucius Leonardus Polk, he was an Episcopal bishop of and he fought in the Civil War. So if you go up around Columbia, Tennessee, where the cemetery is, you will find on his sarcophagus the sign of war and of the church.
Interesting.
One of the only ones to do that take to war.
Yeah.
Was a minister. And then Mary Easton was a niece of Rachel Jackson's. Now, Andrew Jackson had no children. There were no genetic children. His nephew was married to Wizard Donaldson, and he was sort of adopted in a way, as was Mary Easton, because she had no family, and Rachel had grown up with her parents. People died very early back then. And so she was reared there, and she was part of the family. And he's very fond of her. We have had Jackson letters, because, in fact, there was a trunk of them.
Oh, really?
And
Do you still
Campbell
have those?
Brown, who was also a family, you have large families, and all the large families, and when they all marry, then you're connected to all of them, and then they all marry, and you're connected to the whole community or whatever. But anyway, Campbell Brown knew he could never get him away from my grandmother. So he asked her, said, I want to take him down. He was the one responsible for starting the Tennessee Markers.
Okay.
And he took him for the historic thing, and he never brought him back. But there were some others there, and we each have one. I have one hanging in my house. My sister does, yeah. My sister in London does. My two cousins do. And they have just recently put out a volume of all of Polk's correspondence. I mean, of all Jackson's correspondence. Okay. And there's a very interesting story. Well, let me figure out with Mary Easton. So Mary Easton was married. Mary Eaton dissolved the Jackson's cabinet. He dissolved it because they refused to receive Mary Eaton.
Okay.
And she had been the daughter of the boarding house where all of them would come to Washington, and they live in these boarding house things. And anyway, they thought of her as sort of a bad woman, and her husband apparently was a drunkard, and he supposedly died on a ship or something or other. And so it was sort of an ignorable sort of a thing. And when she married John Eaton, who was in his cabin, the other ladies were so pious that they refused to receive her. So Jackson sent Emily Donaldson and Mary Easton back to Nashville, to the Hermitage. And there, she and Lucius Polk met.
Oh.
And
who and Lucius Polk met?
Huh?
Who'd you say met?
Mary.
Mary Easton.
Easton, okay.
Not Eaton, but Easton. So they come back to Washington, and Mary is engaged to marry Buchanan, much older man, and Jackson had bought her trousseau. And Lucius hears about it and takes out for Washington, convinces her to marry him, and they were married in the Blue Room of the White House. And then up here in what they used to call Spring Hill, it's Columbia, that's where some of the Polks came from. And they also had a plantation down here at LaGrange somewhere.
Okay.
But Jackson would write letters to her, and one to another. So that was a family correspondence. She was sort of like a pet.
Do you still have the letters? Are they with you?
I have
She
mine.
has one.
And then, anyway, then, you see, that was Lucius Polk connection. So when they did the Jackson letters, they came after all these letters and put them in a big, thick volume. And my niece, who helped on that project, said that they had a copy of mine. I was shocked at that because Crawford from Memphis, he had come to Nashville or whatever, and he had called and he came out and he wanted to see my letter, and I showed it to him. Now I don't believe ever had a copy of that. I was the only one that had that. I mean, you know, they'd see it probably, but not ever that it was taken out in the trunk or anything. And so Lucy said, "Oh, he has yours. He's opening the book with your letter or whatever." I thought, well, I don't know how in the hell he got it, but you know, if he does, who knows? I wasn't around forever, and it's not the same letter. I think I have one of the only ones that's not bound in that book.
Mm.
Maybe there's some others. They don't know me and I don't know them.
That's interesting, yeah.
I heard you mention Donaldsons. So,
That's Rachel Donaldson. Her nephew, Rachel was married to Andrew Jackson. Rachel was Jackson's wife. And they mistreated her because it was the thing that they were married and she wasn't quite divorced or whatever. And that was the big hoorah about the scandalous Rachel. Mm-hmm. But my grandmother always told me that she was extremely kind and that, you know, back in the old days when black people would get sick, they didn't know too much about medicine. They had their own and whatever people worked for them. But she would go off and see about them and try to do for them. Okay. She was a woman who was concerned with people, you know. But anyway, she never got to Washington. She died. Anyway, there's a whole lot of story in that I could tell you, but this is not getting you anywhere.
Oh, no,
I will have to go back to town eventually.
Because I just asked because John Donaldson, isn't he like the founder of Nashville? Or do you happen to know?
I don't think that I would ever claim that, but I don't know when they firmed up Nashville as a town, you see?
Yeah.
Now, my grandfather, who was John Birch,
Okay.
he was the first secretary of the U.S. Senate to come from the South after the Civil War. And he was the one that gave the first part of the property of Vanderbilt. It was on his farm.
Okay.
And that is when Nashville moved from West Nashville, I get the directions, West Nashville to East Nashville, where it is now.
Okay.
And because then they started putting the schools and you began to get a hospital and you began to grow on that side. Now, all those old houses, the way they were way out was not so much as how much land you could get, which you could. You could have vast lands that day and age. And it was because you had to have good water. So they built where the springs were.
Yeah.
Because water is the most
Yeah.
vital thing, and you need good clean water. You get sick.
So, we've been talking about your family for a long time, and because like you have so many like important men that took up a very important leadership role. In regards to your father, do you happen to know like your father's contribution to the war, or what could you tell us? Like,
I don't think it was much but guarding the
Like,
guarding
yeah.
the prisoners
Before,
and where that was. I have no idea.
Before like
You don't know
Collierville.
where it was?
Hmm?
You don't know where it
I
was?
have no idea.
Mm.
I probably wouldn't have known that except that the prisoners told him the war was over.
Yeah. So do you feel like your father, like, did anything change? So do you like remember any, conversations he would have, or remember people talking about him? Because I know you mentioned you went to Collierville, and Collierville was very involved with war bonds for the war in Collierville. Because I guess I'm just trying to ask, like, is there anything you could tell us that, like,
The only
More about
thing
your
that
father.
I could tell, because I have older sisters as well, was at school they would put together these little boxes and send them to the soldiers.
okay.
And they'd put soap in them, and I don't know what all, maybe toothbrushes and toothpastes and pencils and paper and whatever things you could put in this box.
So they just collect them, just...
Well, they would do it at school.
Okay.
And then that's what the schools did. That was sort of a contribution. They squashed tin cans, I know that.
Okay.
At home, they stomped the tin cans and saved the tin.
Okay. What were they used for?
Huh?
What were the tin cans used for?
Oh, they would recycle
Oh, okay.
whatever, the metal and,
Okay.
and some value. I don't know what they did, but I don't know. I don't know how that affected. I know that after the war, they were with meatless days in America was a contribution to the people starving in Europe after the war. But I don't remember about being without meat because my father hunted and fished and we ate a lot, grew up on a lot of game.
Right.
And then, this would be interesting though, the butcher shop in Collierville, it had what they call frozen food lockers. And I would go up there with my mother when I was little before I could ever even go to school. And she would walk in and we would bypass the butcher thing and walk in and walk into the freezer.
Okay.
And you pulled out this huge drawer. You rented a drawers when you killed something and cut it up and wrapped it in paper or whatever. And then you go up and pick out your own meat from your locker.
That's interesting.
Nobody had refrigeration like that.
Huh. There you go.
Uh-huh.
That's neat.
It was it's a big freezer.
And everybody had their own little section, I guess?
I guess they all rented it. That's because that's the way it was laid out.
Okay.
And, so it wasn't a walk-in freezer, but it was a
Right.
huge drawer.
Yeah.
It would be this deep, because they put chickens in it. They would put whatever you eat.
Okay. I'd also like to ask, because also as part of my top four is the African American community. Because as I started to look at the census, there were more African Americans in Collierville than I would think there was. And so I just wanted to see what you could tell us about your connection or the African American community.
Well, let me tell you something I learned this as an adult. When they freed the slaves at Friars Point, do you know where Friars Point is? I don't know. You were from around here originally?
Oh, no, ma'am. Well, I'm from Memphis originally.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're within circumstances.
Is it on
my
this
own
map
self.
by chance?
But Friars Point, a lot of the blacks came down to Bahia.
Okay.
And so Earlene, who worked for us, was from Bahia. I don't know if she ever connected herself with Friars Point. They didn't know it, I don't think, or thought about it. They were moving forward. They couldn't afford to go backwards. I mean, that was a no-no. Even though that meant security oftentimes, because it was such a hard thing for them all to get employable work, and nobody had as much money as they had. They were doing the trickle down, which was a drip, drip, drip. But anyway, Earlene, it was basically through the churches.
Yeah.
That was the empowerment of the collective thing. And I remember somebody saying somewhere in my life as an adult that one of the, for instance, people who worked, say, at the country club, they were important people in their community because who did they serve? They served the people who had the money and were the influences in the community. This is particularly in Memphis. And so, they'd say, oh, Mr. So-and-so, we need this, or so-and-so, what's going to happen? And they have a relationship. And you knew the people who did for you. They were people of feeling because you constantly talked to them. You were constantly know. You did not know as open a life as they knew about your open life because you were never totally, in it. But I can remember being taken to there was a black church over here on the side road of where we were, which is, it comes into Frank, what is it, Bay?
Is it on this map?
A Shea.
Oh, no. That's
Well,
on this map,
anyway,
okay.
there was a one-room schoolhouse,
Okay.
and there was a church. Now, I don't know who took me to that church, but I remember being there
Right.
just once. And I used to ride my pony back over there.
Mhm.
But
How was that experience for you?
it was wondrous.
Okay. So it's like, were you like the only white person at the black church, or
At
like,
that
at
point.
that point?
But there were some other things like that, you know.
And I guess I just want to know like how your experience
Yeah.
was with that, because I know like black church and white church were very different at the time. I just want to know like your view
Yeah.
on it.
As you would go to mine and see mine as for except I didn't go to church. The only reason I got christened was because there were 4 of us finally, and nobody had been christened.
Okay.
And my grandmother, who was the diplomat of the family, my grandfather was very religious and was a friend of one of the bishops, Episcopal, is what the thing was. And anyway, so my grandma, he's very concerned about his grandchildren who are not being christened. And so she apparently talks to my father and says, Lucius, you must get these children christened. Because if you don't, they're going to grow up and find out about religion and they're going to become fanatics. So for the prevention of being fanatics, we were christened.
There you go. Yeah. That's funny.
Now, Mary Lou Cooper, Tesmore,
Mhm.
her family was here, and you know where it looks like a filling station. They had sold appliances and things down there
Okay.
on Poplar.
Okay.
They got a little dress shop in it now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You'll notice that next to it is a very flat place.